Well met, fellow travellers, and welcome to Innsmouth. Welcome to the Oldie Bookshop in Innsmouth for our 106th expedition into everybody's favourite sea town, and we have a cracking story lined up for you today. I am one of your guides, Rob Poyton.
And I'm the other one, Tim Mendes. Yes, this is one of my personal favourites and one I've wanted to do for a while because, I'm a sucker for a bit of man-eating fungus. So today we're going to be covering William Hope Hodgson's A Voice in the Night.
Yeah, this blends the sort of fungus trope with sea hauntings and weird stories at sea, doesn't it? Which, of course, was a speciality of Hodgson.
Yeah, his whole Sargasso Sea cycle. Try saying that several times fast when you've had a couple. They're all very good weird tales because he was a sailor himself, wasn't he? So there's that sort of authenticity to them.
Absolutely. But before we get into talking about WHH and his life and this story, we've got a couple of little news items. First off, we've got a guest announcement for the upcoming Innsmouth Literary Festival. We're delighted to be welcoming Ali Wilkes along as a special guest and panellist. She's the author of two excellent novels, All the White Spaces in 2022 and Where the Dead Wait in 2023, as well as Jamie Hallow and the End of the World. It's a Lovecraftian YA book, very interesting. And those first two books I mentioned are set in the Arctic and Antarctic, very atmospheric books. I've just actually finished reading Where the Dead Wait, and All the White Spaces I read last year. At the time I was away, I was working in the south of France, which is quite a warm place. But that book is so well written, I was actually getting chills.
Nice. Yeah, I like it when that kind of thing happens. I had it with the video game Colat, which is based on the Dyatlov Pass incident.
Oh, yeah.
And the sound effects and everything was so good. Yeah, it was middle of the summer and I started shivering. So...
And furthermore, she's going to be popping into Innsmouth next time as well. We're going to be having a chat with her. She's dropping by to the Gilman Hotel. So look out for that in a couple of weeks as well. And I believe you have some gig news, sir. You're out live on the road.
Indeed. Yeah, indeed. It's going to be my first live show with Grooving in Green. It's taking place as part of the Darker Days Festival up in Leicester International on Saturday, the 28th of June. We're playing in the evening. I believe we're on stage at 8. The reason I mention this on this podcast is one of the new tracks we're doing. One of the new songs we're going to be debuting at the festival is a little number that I wrote by the name of The Shuttered Room.
Oh, nice.
There we go. Yeah, a bit of weird fiction influence on that. It's obviously influenced by the Derleth story and also by the Yellow Wallpaper. So, yeah.
That's a good mix.
Yeah, so there we go.
They fit together.
Yeah.
That was an Oliver Reed movie as well, wasn't it? I think The Shuttered Room.
It was indeed, and in fact, I've actually sampled the trailer for the intro.
Oh, brilliant!
Yeah, so that's going to be a fun little evening. Speaking of which, you recently had a weekend away, didn't you?
Yeah, well, it wasn't that far away. It was just outside of Bedford, at a place called Cranfield. There's a university there, and they've got big conference facilities, and that was the setting for the first ever Chaosium Con, which was 3 days of Chaosium-based gaming. So obviously Call of Cthulhu, but also RuneQuest. They've got a new Viking RPG that's just released, I think. Rivers of London, of course, Ben Aranovich was there. And it was 3 days of gaming panels. I had a trade table there, of course, selling some books and other bits and pieces. And also, I'm glad to say, some tickets for the ILF as well.
Nice.
A few familiar faces, obviously Mike Mason, Paul Fricker were there, Matt Sanderson and Trisha, who are all at the ILF. So, yeah, it was a great weekend. Met some very interesting people. There were a lot of writers and artists there as well. And hopefully they'll be running that next year as well. I think that's going to become a regular on the gaming calendar. I have put a report up on my Dragon's Teeth gaming channel. I'll put a link to that out in the show notes below. So, all that done, shall we step into the cool confines of your bookshop, sir, and begin our discussion?
Indeed, yes, come along in. And as you can see, there's bottles about, so Zadok's been in. You know, he likes to pop in of a cold evening and...
Not the absinthe again, is it?
Smothering the parrot, yeah.
Oh, I did have another Victorian saying lined up for you, but I can't remember it now.
Oh no.
I'm reading a book. It's called was it East End Tales or something like that, and it's the history of the East End all the way back. It was along the lines of Smothering the Parrot, and
Nice.
I thought of you immediately when I read it.
Oh, brilliant. I'm a sucker for the Victorian slang. I really am.
Now, speaking of London, well, it isn't really, but we're kind of close to London because William Hope Hodgson was born in Essex, November the 15th, 1877, near Finchingfield in Essex, which is not a place I'm familiar with, I have to say.
No.
His father was an Anglican clergyman, and by all accounts, he was something of a bit of a sort of hellfire preacher. And he had numerous conflicts with the church authorities, which led to the family moving about. I think he was kind of pushed from parish to parish, sort of. What's the thing they say? People are promoted sideways, aren't they, when you want to get rid of them?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, yeah. So he's a bit of a Father Jack kind of character, that.
And in his 21 years as a priest, he served 11 parishes, the last of which was in Blackburn, Lancashire, which is where the young William spent his formative years. There you go. So up your way then.
Oh, my neck of the woods, yeah.
From down my way to up your way.
Yeah.
Now, we have spoke about WHH before. In fact, it was a very early episode. I think it was episode 8. We looked at one of the Carnacki stories, The Whistling Room. And we did also think we've spoken about the house on the borderland before, but maybe that was for another podcast because we can't find it.
No, I think we have done that for another podcast, but we have also spoke about it on here.
Yeah.
But I think it was part of something else that we were talking about. There was similarities. It may have been on Strange Shadows. I don't know. I know we've talked about it at some point, but I can't remember where or when.
But Hodgson's a very interesting character, and in some ways he sort of breaks the mold of weird fiction writers. I don't know, has Lovecraft become the sort of standard idea of a weird fiction writer? Supposedly reclusive, very backward looking in their views, a little bit of an odd person, perhaps. I don't know. Hodgson wasn't really any of those, was he?
No, he wasn't. He did a lot of other stuff other than weird fiction as well, didn't he? His weird stories were actually quite a smaller chunk of his full output.
Yeah. And he was very much into physical fitness and health and activity. He actually became a student of judo, which at the time that was something very new. I think the Edwardians had there was a bit of a craze, or maybe even late Victorians, for martial arts, wasn't there? With a certain Mr. Holmes.
Yes, indeed.
All the rest of
it.
And I can't remember the date of the first judo school in England, but it certainly was back then about that time. So as well as becoming a student of judo, he got into body development. Again, that seemed to be quite a big thing at the time. You had all those famous muscle men, strong men of the day.
Yes. And the tonics. Don't forget the tonics that you used to get in the back of the Penny Dreadfuls and all that. Basically enhance your physique with Peregrine's Wonder Tonic.
Always a picture of a muscly guy in a sort of leopard skin outfit.
Yeah, have to have the moustache.
The moustache.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that shows his virility, right?
Exactly.
And in fact, in October 1902, Harry Houdini appeared at the Blackburn Palace Theatre. He had embarrassed the Blackburn police by escaping with ease from Blackburn Jail in order to promote the show. And on October the 24th, in answer to Houdini's challenge to the public for anyone who could bind him in a manner from which he could not release himself, Hodgson climbed up onto the stage.
Nice.
Now, Hodgson had some handcuffs that the police had given him, and because he had such a knowledge of like judo and locks and how the muscles work and everything else, he managed to, as we'd say, truss him up right and proper.
Excellent.
Houdini wasn't pleased. In fact, it took him two hours to escape. That's not much of a show, is it?
Oh, good on him. That's brilliant. Oh, that's an interesting parallel, because obviously you think of Lovecraft, and obviously Lovecraft and Houdini under the pyramids. So that's an interesting parallel, isn't it? Yeah.
Nice little connection there, isn't it? Yeah. And again, a direct physical interaction. So I'm not sure that Houdini and Lovecraft ever physically met.
Not sure.
I think it was correspondence. I could be wrong on that, but yeah, if anyone out there does know, then do tell. But then the other interesting thing that made me laugh about this was the Blackburn Star reported that Hodgson had to flee the theatre and run to the local police, fearful of the temper of the audience, who felt he had been un-British in the binding of Houdini.
Oh, so there's a British way of binding somebody, is there?
Yeah, you guys give the chap a sporting chance, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah.
But the guy's saying he can escape from anything, then,
Cinch him up good and proper. Yeah.
And he did escape, but 2 hours. Wow, that's quite intense, isn't it?
We just got images of him wriggling around on the floor like some weird caterpillar.
Everyone sat there eating popcorn, watching or something. I don't think much of this.
Yeah, Blackburn,
I'm just thinking of Will Tabbers and Shunters with your Colin Compton would have been ringing his bell 10 minutes in.
Indeed, yeah. Brilliant.
And of course, as we've alluded to, the other main feature of Hodgson's life was his seagoing travels, because on August the 28th, 1891, the 14-year-old William travelled to Liverpool and signed on as a cabin boy on an ocean-going windjammer. This was probably because his father had died quite recently, and he was the second of 12 children, although 3 of those died in infancy. So obviously, the family needs money. So he became I guess it would have been the merchant navy, I guess. Would you have joined in?
Yeah, merchant. Yeah.
And took to a life at sea, which didn't start very well. It was quite unpleasant between the maggots in the food and the abuse of the older crew members. So not a pleasant time for him. So you can see there the impetus to then take up judo and get himself fit and strong, aren't you, really?
Yeah, of course.
Yes, 8 years at sea before he decided it was a dog's life. He rose to the rank of third mate and was also awarded the Royal Humane Society's Award for Heroism when off the coast of New Zealand, he dived into shark-infested waters to rescue the first mate of his ship from drowning. How about that?
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, you can see a lot of these experiences being used in his Sargasso stories.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure that happens. Okay, I think he's a big tentacle monster, not a shark, but I'm pretty sure that happens in one of the stories.
He was also very keen on photography, which of course at that time was in its infancy, and he took to photographing cyclones and storms at sea. And in fact, the photographs and lectures made him, at least as much, if not more so, than his writing.
Mm.
At 22, he returned to Blackburn and opened W.H. Hodgson's School of Physical Culture at 13 Ainsworth Street. And that relationship with the local police, he did well out of that because they became his best customers. And soon, apparently, he had the reputation of the town's most eccentric madcap.
Nice.
He started writing in 1903. He began with non-fiction, writing on physical culture and photography. The following year, he turned to fiction and wrote his first short story entitled The Goddess of Death. His second story, a tropical horror, was published in the Grand magazine, which was a rival to the Strand. J. Greenough Smith, the editor and a noted literary critic of the day, wrote, "Though this story, a terrible tale of the sea, may be too gruesome for some tastes, it is written in a masterly manner and with an air of reality that holds and rivets the attention of the reader in a way that recalls the best efforts of Defoe." So I think, as you mentioned, that's what comes across in these stories, particularly the nautical tales. There is a sense of realism in there.
Incidentally, I think it was a tropical horror is the one I was mentioning with the big tentacle monster.
Ah, right. His first novel was The Boats of Glen Carrig in 1907. That drew favourable comparisons with H.G. Wells. This story was printed in the American magazine The Blue Book. Many regard it as Hodgson's greatest short story. It's certainly one of his best. I think we're both big fans of Carnacki as well, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's interesting what we were saying about the realism and things, because that's something H.P. Lovecraft singled out in supernatural horror and literature. He said that his fiction was of vast occasional power in his suggestion of lurking worlds and beings behind the ordinary surface of life, and that Hodgson was second only to Algernon Blackwood in his serious treatment of unreality.
Very nice. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think one of the things that prompted Lovecraft to write that was, of course, The House on the Borderland, which was published in 1908, which is one of the central pillars of weird fiction, isn't it? A classic.
It is. Yeah, it's up there with things like The Great God Pan and The Wendigo and, of the early Holy Trinity, for want of a better term, of weird fiction, Blackwood, Machen, and Hodgson.
Yeah. In 1909, he published The Ghost Pirates, another novel. And between 1910 and 1911, he wrote what he himself considered his greatest work, 200,000 words long, the apocalyptical novel The Nightland, set millions of years in the future. Now, I started reading this some years ago and couldn't get very far, but I think you said before you've actually read it.
Yeah, I have read it. It's one of those. Halfway through it kind of all clicked for me, but it is quite dense. I mean, I find that with Borderlands as well. It's quite dense in places and quite hard to get. It's got that very archaic kind of style to it. But once you get through that, it's a cracking novel. It is really, really good stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's one of the early sort of dying Earth kind of things, isn't it?
I guess it is, yeah. It's set in the future, right? The sun is dying or dead and eternal night.
Night, yeah.
So they live in a large sort of pyramid thing and there's things outside and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I do still have the book. I never got rid of the book, so I shall get back to reading it one day. So with the outbreak of the First World War, Hodgson, although he was in his late 30s at the time, volunteered for active service. He rejected a commission in the Navy. I think he'd had enough of the sea and that lifestyle. He wasn't. He never had many good things to say about it. And he became a lieutenant in the Royal Field Artillery. He was thrown from a horse in 1916 and broke his jaw and injured his head and was discharged from the army on medical grounds. He continued writing during that time, but once he'd recovered from his injuries, he insisted on going back into the army. And in 1918, he was sent back to France. He wrote this to his mother from the trenches. The sun was pretty low as I came back, and far off across that desolation, here and there they showed, just formless, squarish, cornerless masses erected by man against the infernal storm that sweeps forever, night and day and night, across that most atrocious plain of destruction. My God, talk about the lost world, talk about the end of the world, talk about the Nightland. It is all here, not more than 200 miles off from where you sit, infinitely remote. And the infinite, monstrous, dreadful pathos of the things one sees, the great shell hole with over 30 crosses sticking up in it, some just up out of the water, and the dead below them, submerged. If I live and come out of this, and certainly, please God, I shall and hope to, what a book I shall write, if my old ability with the pen has not forsaken me. Sad to say that book was never written because in April 1918, at the Battle of Ypres, Hodgson was killed in an artillery bombardment at the age of 40 years old. It's hard not to draw some parallels with Tolkien there, who obviously have very similar experiences, but fortunately survived and went on to produce the great work that he did. We can only wonder as to what Hodgson would have produced after that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a desperate shame, isn't it?
So let's move on to the story. I've actually got this in a collection called Masters of Terror 1, which is a corgi book from 1977, edited by Peter Tremaine, not a name familiar to me. This is one of those great old books I'm sure I bought in a second-hand bookshop somewhere back in the day. And in fact, quite a few of the conversations over the weekend at Chaosium were with people bemoaning the loss of the good old second-hand bookshop.
Oh, yeah. Well, something we've moaned about quite a lot, isn't it? Yeah, the version I'm going from is from the British Library Tales of the Weird collection, The Weird Tales of William Hope Hodgson, which came out in 2019. It's got like this in it: Tropical Horror, Out of the Storm, Gateway of the Monster, Horse of the Invisible, Whistling Room, Derelict, Thing in the Weeds, The Hog, and The Riven Knight. It's a nice little collection. Now, Nightshade have released all of his fiction in a similar collection that they did with Clark Ashton Smith, which we're going from for Strange Shadows.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they've published his weird fiction in its entirety between 2005 and 2009. There's several volumes, like very, very similar to the Clark Ashton Smith thing.
That gives me an idea for a podcast.
I know. Yeah. Funny that, isn't it?
Perhaps post Strange Shadows will visit Hodgson.
Now, something else of interest will be a biography of Hodgson written by Massimo Baruti, S.T. Joshi, and Sam Gafford, called William Hope Hodgson, Voices from the Borderlands. Now, there's also a specialized journal on Hodgson called Sargasso, the Journal of William Hope Hodgson's Studies, founded in 2013, and a doctoral dissertation by Emily Adler called William Hope Hodgson's Borderlands from 2009.
Brilliant. It sounds a little bit perhaps like the Robert Chambers situation, where these people were both very well known in their day because Chambers was hugely successful.
Yeah.
And then their popularity just seemed to disappear, but has been revived again, largely through HPL.
Yeah, very much so. Because, yeah, like same with Blackwood and the same with Mackin as well, I guess you could say. Because the renewed interest in those guys, same as Hodgson, is for the influence that they had on Lovecraft and Smith and Howard and all these other people.
Yeah, and then it comes down to, people say Robert E. Howard is the father of sword and sorcery and Lovecraft is the father of the weird. And yes, but also no.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of those debates that can go round and round, I suppose. But they weren't the first in that sense. They drew on these earlier influences.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned at the start, this is a nautical story. And in fact, our opening scene sets us in the northern Pacific. It was a dark, starless night. We were becalmed in the northern Pacific. Our exact position I do not know, for the sun had been hidden during the course of a weary, breathless week by a thin haze which had seemed to float above us about the height of our mastheads, at whiles descending and shrouding the surrounding sea. With there being no wind, we had steadied the tiller, and I was the only man on deck. The crew, consisting of 2 men and a boy, were sleeping forward in their den. So we're on this quite small boat. It's a schooner, I believe it's described. It sounds like they're on a sort of fishing trip or something like that.
Yeah. It's basically a bunch of mates, really, because the other character that comes into this is the guy called Will, who is his friend and the master of the little craft. So, yeah, it's just a bunch of guys on a boat, basically, isn't there?
Well, 2 things I noticed. One, that opening paragraph is pretty much just one sentence.
Yep.
So you can see where Lovecraft got that idea from, that style of writing he tried to emulate. Though I have to say with Hodgson, at least in this case and his Carnacki cases, it's easy to read. It doesn't drag. It doesn't seem to drag you down too much.
No, which is that's something in his short stories. Whereas his longer works, like as I mentioned, the Nightlands and Borderlands as well, they have a lot of these, which you could almost call HPL kind of paragraphs, which are enormous, and there's no punctuation whatsoever. Well, Mackin did it as well, didn't he, with like the white people,
yes,
and things like that. And it's while it's quite effective to build tension and things like this, where we've talked about that breathing thing that Susan Hill uses. But it's not very easy to read.
Yeah, I have to say with some Mackin in particular, I do struggle a bit. I think out of all the authors, well, apart from the Nightlands, that is a style that I do struggle with a bit in some of the stories, at least. So we're on this becalmed ship or boat. I'm not sure the correct terminology there. I should ask my father-in-law lives in Plymouth. And, well, he's giving it up now, but he was a very keen yachtsman. Yeah, that's the sort of thing he'd do with his mate. They'd sail off to somewhere for the week and then come back again.
Yeah.
Off to Amsterdam or something. That was his story anyway. Who am I to...
Right, yeah.
Who am I to question? We've already got this idea of a becalmed sea, so it's very smooth, it's very quiet, it's very still. We've got this haze or mist that descends and ascends every now and again. And then we get that really spooky thing of a hoarse voice calling out from across the waves. And with water, you get a strange effect with sound. It feels like it could be really close, even though it isn't.
Yeah, that is very strange because I used to do a bit of sailing when I was younger, and yeah, that especially when you get fog and other atmospheric effects, it can really warp sound and make it. Yeah, it sounds like somebody's talking to you, standing next to you, but they're not. They're way over there. It's very, very strange.
Schooner ahoy! Hello! I sung out, having gathered my wits somewhat. What are you? What do you want? I thought that was quite prophetic, the what are you? Because that's how, I guess, that they identify each other, right? This is the frigate, whatever, rather than, oh, I am. So, yeah.
Indeed.
But that takes on a more sinister meaning as we go through.
Yeah, and this next bit of dialogue, it just enhances that sense of unease, doesn't it? You need not be afraid, answered the queer voice, having probably noticed some trace of confusion in my tone. I am only an old man.
Yes.
It's the pause, isn't it? Yeah.
That means you're not, right?
Yeah.
Or, well, we're not quite sure what. Do we ever get the narrator's name? We don't, do we?
No, we don't.
I mean, I can almost assume it's Hodgson himself. It's a bit like HPL, it's a kind of version of him in the story. I get the same impression with Hodgson.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah, well, he asks, why don't you come alongside? And we get this sort of hesitant reply, or I can't, it wouldn't be safe. So, again, the suspicion and the tension builds up another notch.
Yeah. Because he's asking for food and provisions and things like this, isn't he? So they're like, well, come alongside. One of them gets out a light, and the guy freaks out. It's just like, put away the light. I'm damned if I will, I muttered, but Will told me to do as the voice bade, and I shoved it down under the bulwarks.
Oh, dear. Yeah, I was couldn't help thinking of Dad's Army, the ARP were there, put that light out.
Put that light out, yeah.
So the narrator here is suspicious, and that would be quite natural, right? It sounds like he's rowing, so that gives the impression he's in a small rowboat or something. They're out in the middle of the Pacific, so, what the fudge there? That's a bit odd, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I love this opening this sequence. It's incredibly atmospheric and really, really creepy, but not a lot really happens. It's as the story calls it, it's a voice in the night.
Yeah, totally. And all these other little details, like the splash of the oar going into the water and the creak of the rollocks, all that kind of thing.
You don't want creaky rollocks, do you?
That was for Niels.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and we get this, it's quite an extended exchange about, well, I'm not going to come close if you keep the light there. And this goes on for a fair bit. And in the end, Will intervenes. Shut up a minute, old man, he said in a low voice. Let me tackle him. So the narrator is an older man. And like you say, it's Will's boat. Or is that just that familiarity? That's old man. It's the familiarity thing, isn't it? Oh, listen here, old man.
Listen here, old chap.
Yeah.
It's what I think it's one of them. Because I had the same, I picked up on that as well. I was like, does it mean he's an old man, or is it that era? Listen here, old man. I say, old man, let's go for a brandy.
I think it is that, yeah. So Will leans over the rail. See here, mister, he said. This is a pretty queer business, you coming upon us like this, right out in the middle of the blessed Pacific. How are we to know what sort of hanky-panky trick you're up to? You say there's only one of you. How are we to know unless we get a squint at you, eh? What's your objection to the light, anyway? Now, hanky-panky, that stood out there for me because it's...
Of course it did.
Of course it did. Bound to. It's a phrase I've not heard for a while, but we all grew up with that, right?
Yeah.
And of course, the meaning to us is a little bit of... Right.
Yeah. The carry-on meaning.
Yeah, a bit of rumpus pumpus.
Rumpus pumpus, yes.
But I always wonder where these terms come from, how they originate, particularly in the English language, because we've got so many of them. And apparently the first recorded instance of hanky-panky was in Punch magazine in 1841. And it looks like originally it referred to sleight of hand, like a magic trick. So you can see, people make handkerchiefs disappear and all that kind of stuff, can't you? You can kind of see that.
Yes.
However, There's also a competing theory or along similar lines that it's from a Romani phrase, Hackney punky, and I'm probably pronouncing that very badly. And then I got into thinking about how well, I'm sure in lots of other places, but in London in particular, you get that strange mix of local English, Yiddish, Romani, and that all develops into rhyming slang and Polari and all those kind of things, because I'm sure Polari used hanky panky.
Oh, well, yeah, it did. Yeah. You got the same with Manchester as well. And Liverpool as well. Anywhere that's got like that kind of melting pot culture going on. Yeah.
And there is one other speculation that it's a derivation of hocus pocus, which dates even further back, 1635, apparently, the first written hocus pocus. And that is thought possibly to be a degradation of the word spoken in the Latin Mass, hoc est corpus. So there's an interesting thing there.
That's nice. Now, you see, the one that rings truest to me would be the sleight of hand thing, because I've heard hanky panky used in relation to the Victorian spiritualism and the table tipping and seances. And you know that you had people like it was their job almost to debunk all this, because I've heard it described as all that table tipping hanky panky.
Ah, right.
Yeah. So that one rings truest to me.
Yeah,
but who knows?
It fits in with that sleight of hand, and and then it came, or perhaps through that spiritualist thing, it came to mean trickery, general kind of people trying to pull the wool over your eyes. And at some point in some time, it came to that ruder meaning that we know today.
Well, you know, sleight of hand.
Well, yes, there is that. I mean, I was going to say, how's your father as well? That was
how's your father?
Fancy a bit of how's your father. But where did that one come from? I'll have to investigate that.
Morty Vickers, the other one as well, isn't it?
Oh dear. So yes, hanky panky at sea is the subtitle of this story, perhaps.
that would be the carry-on version, wouldn't it?
There's a very interesting mix in this, I think, of the tension he maintains between horror and pathos. In fact, in a lot of ways, this goes back to Deathline that we watched last episode. It's inverted commas monster, but is it? You know, a bit like the Deathline guy. This guy's just looking for something to eat. He wants to look after his fiance in this case.
Yeah, because that comes up now, doesn't it? And he's basically in reply to that, he says, I am sorry, I would not have troubled you, only I am hungry. And so is she. And that's the first mention of this she. So that brings, I think he cultivates the mystery really, really well in this. The pacing is spot on, because he kind of drip feeds these little hooks, fishing hooks, that sort of get you, because start off is the mystery of just the voice and who is it. Then why doesn't he want to be seen? Why is he hiding from the light? And who the hell is this she he's on about? It's kind of, if you look at it, it's kind of like each page has a new addition to the mystery.
Yeah, a new little layer. And I have to say, I think the first time I read this, I read that she as being something quite ominous, like he's been sent out by she. That's where I thought this was going on first reading. So when they hear this, they soften a little bit, and Will says, I'll put the lamp back, and we get the oars coming closer, but he still won't come totally alongside. I cannot, replied the voice. I dare not come nearer. I dare not even pay you for the provisions. And Will, I suppose this is the code of the sea kind of thing, maybe. Oh, that's all right. We've got plenty of provisions. Take as much grub as you like.
Yeah. And this is where Will actually questions, doesn't it? The lady, is she? And the voice replies that he'd left her behind on an island.
So then there's another little hook, right?
There's another one. This is another page on, right? It's another little breadcrumb.
Could we not send a boat for her? Asked Will at this point. No, said the voice with extraordinary emphasis. My God, no. There was a moment's pause. Then it added, in a tone which seemed a merited reproach, it was because of our want I ventured, because her agony tortured me. It's like sheets of paper being laid down, isn't it?
It's really well done. It's a tremendously well-written story, this. And it's not very long, but it packs a lot into a very short... I mean, this is how you do a short story, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know?
And there's still possibly of an opinion at the moment that this poor, well, as they say, the poor devil's been wrecked and gone crazy. So, he's washed up on this island and he's gone a bit sunstrokey and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So that's their kind of thought at the moment. But they display a lot of empathy towards them, and they get some provisions together. You get this as well. It came to me then in a flash that the poor old creature out there in the darkness was suffering for actual need of that which Will held in his arms. That's the provisions. And yet, because of some unintelligible dread, refraining from dashing to the side of our little schooner and receiving it, and with the lightning-like conviction, there came the knowledge that the invisible was not mad, but sanely facing some intolerable horror. So quite perceptive of this guy, I think.
Yeah. So the narrator now basically leaps into action, doesn't he? He tells Will to get a box, we'll float the stuff out. So this is what they do, using a boat hook and all this, which is, quite a good, nice image, isn't it? You can just picture this dark sea and then pushing this thing out into the mist.
Yeah, it sort of slowly disappears,
Yeah.
Then they hear the box being picked up kind of thing, and a farewell and a heartful blessing, and then the ply of oars across the darkness. So off he goes. And of course, they sort of talk about this. Well, that was a bit odd, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's the queerest thing I've ever tumbled across since I've been fishing.
And the lady, wonder who she is.
Yeah.
I mean, what are they going to do? They don't know which direction he went in or anything else. But it's nearly 4 hours later when the sound of oars floats across the silent ocean once again. So this time it sounds like the boat draws a little closer and we get "Schooner ahoy" again. "Is that you?" asked Will. "Yes," replied the voice. "I left you suddenly, but there was great need." "The lady?" questioned Will. "The lady is grateful now on earth. She will be more grateful soon in heaven." So, again, we've got that hesitation before lady like we had before man, and the implication that she's not long for this earth.
Yeah, and he's incredibly grateful now, isn't he? Because he's sort of saying, she and I have talked as we shared the results of God's tenderness and yours. And Will, he does that British chap thing, doesn't he? He wants to say, "No, don't think anything of it."
Downplay it all.
Yeah. But the voice continues, "I beg you not to belittle your deed of Christian charity." And it turns out that he's spoken with the lady, and they've decided to tell them what's happened, pretty much.
Yes, and this is where we get the story of what happens to this pair. And this all started with the sinking of the Albatross. I can't imagine any sailor calling a ship Albatross. I think that's WHH having a little bit of a joke there, isn't it? I think. I think so. Because, your brain instantly goes to Coleridge, right? Ancient Mariner. And this is the painted ship upon a painted ocean, right? Indeed, yeah, becalmed, yeah. And our narrator has heard of this. She left Newcastle for Frisco 6 months ago and hasn't been heard of since. So this is a ship that has mysteriously disappeared. And we get the story of what happened. Ship's caught in a terrible storm and dismasted. When the day came, it was found that she was leaking badly. And presently, it falling to a calm, the sailors took to the boats, leaving this guy and his young lady, fiancée, upon the wreck. So the sailors basically did a bunk and left this couple on the boat. Yeah. We were below gathering together a few of our belongings when they left. They were entirely calloused through fear. And when we came upon the decks, we saw them only as small shapes afar off upon the horizon. That's quite a chilling image, isn't it? You sort of run it. They've probably said, "Oh, yeah, if you want to go down below decks and pack your stuff, come back up when you've got all your stuff," and they get back and you just got these little boats out in the distance. You must think, fuck that. Yeah, so basically they've been left with the life raft. So they gather some provisions, some water, some ship's biscuit, probably with weevils in them, and get in the raft and push off. And, this guy doesn't say that he's a sailor or anything else. It sounds like maybe they were passengers on the ship. You wouldn't be taking your fiance on a job, so to speak, would you, or anything else if you were working the ship? Presumably, or as they say, heading for San Francisco.
Yeah. Pleasure cruise.
Well,
going for a jaunt, as they used to say.
off to see Mr. Sterling and co, perhaps, in San Fran.
Yeah.
That then later on, that plays into this whole thing of this young couple perhaps setting out for a new life that is obviously cut short. So the raft is borne away on a current. After 3 hours have gone past, the ship has disappeared. Then towards evening it grew misty, and so through the night. The next day we were still encompassed by the mist, the weather remaining quiet. This is a thing with the sea, isn't it? You've either got this incredible calm or you've got 40-foot waves. This is why we stay on land.
Yes. Unless you're a deep one, obviously.
I'm trying to keep that quiet.
Yeah. Pull your collar up to see your gills.
So morning comes and the mist lifts and they find that they're in a lagoon, a great lagoon, and looming over them is the hull of a large sailing vessel. So that's quite a creepy thing. I always find abandoned ships spooky. Can be a modern ship even, but you see sometimes where a ship has been damaged or it sinks and they just leave it there. And you get those images when the tide's out of a big sort of oil tanker or something, just at an angle on a beach somewhere. Always creepy.
Yeah. I'm kind of reminded here by the third of the Blind Dead movies, which are tremendous movies, Ghost Galleon, because, this is the similar kind of setup, right? They come across this ship, this abandoned old frigate or whatever it is, and they get on it and it's got the eyeless Templar zombies milling about on it. Yeah, great movie, that one.
The raft drew near to the ship and we shouted on them to take us aboard, but none answered. Presently the raft touched the side of the vessel, and seeing a rope hanging downwards, I seized it and began to climb. Yet I had much ado to make my way up because of a kind of grey lichenous fungus which had seized upon the rope and which blotched the side of the ship lividly. So there's our first glimpse of the dread fungus. And the ship is liberally covered with this stuff, right, when he gets up onto the deck. I saw the decks were covered in great patches with the grey masses, some of them rising into nodules several feet in height. But at the time I thought less of this matter than of the possibility of there being people aboard the ship. Well, later on, we can put two and two together.
Indeed, we can. Yeah. Yeah, this is one of those stories that in hindsight, it becomes even creepier.
It is, yeah. You go back and look at those bits and you think, all right, yeah, I know what they are now.
Well, no, yeah, once you realise what these big nodules are. Yeah.
His fiancée joins him and they start to search the ship, the cabins and apartments. It's all a bit sort of Mary Celeste.
Very much.
In terms of, there's still provisions there. They find the freshwater pump and all that sort of thing. And the ship seems pretty well stocked. Well, I guess if it was sailing to San Fran, then I don't know, how long would that have taken at that time? It's a fair old, it would be weeks, isn't it? I would have thought.
Yeah.
And they don't find anybody. They don't find any sign of the crew. Well, they don't apparently find any sign of the crew, though, of course, they have.
Yes.
And this takes them several days. They stay aboard the ship. They don't even try and get to the shore. And it's like they're tidying the ship up. They think, well, we might as well live on the ship for a bit until we get rescued.
Yeah, it's like they keep cleaning up this fungus, but then the next day it grows back. And don't they get like they find a can of carbolic, which is one of those things that you don't see or hear about anymore. But I remember that from my gran.
Carbolic soap.
Carbolic soap.
Yeah, the smell of it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, they clean the fungus away, but a few days later, by the end of the week, it's back in full strength, and it starts spreading. And this is where then it starts to get really grim. On the 7th morning, my sweetheart woke to find a small patch of it growing on her pillow close to her face. At that she came to me so soon as she could get her garments upon her. I was in the galley at the time, lighting a fire for breakfast. "Come here, John," she said, and led me aft. When I saw the thing upon a pillow, I shuddered, and then and there we agreed to go right out of the ship and see whether we could not fare to make ourselves more comfortable ashore. So they grab their stuff, get it all together, and they're going to leave the ship. Though he notices that one of her shawls has also got some fungus on now as well. It's already started.
Yeah, so he ditches it overboard and doesn't tell her because he doesn't want to worry her. Yeah, you can already see where this is going, right?
Yeah. It's not really much better on shore, is it?
No, it's really
not. Fact is that you could say it's even worse.
Yeah. In places, it rose into horrible, fantastic mounds, which seemed almost to quiver, as with quiet life, when the wind blew across them. Here and there, it took on the forms of vast fingers, and in others, it just spread out flat and smooth and treacherous. Odd places, it appeared as grotesque stunted trees, seeming extraordinarily kinked and gnarled, the whole quaking vilely at times.
Yeah, I mean, fungus is one thing, but the fungus that is kind of quaking or shaking or moving in some way, that's very, very creepy.
Yeah. Almost brings to mind like H.R. Geiger, doesn't it? Because, like aliens and things like this, yeah, the walls are all covered in this growth, this sweating, pulsing organic matter. It's incredibly creepy sort of thing, isn't it?
And they do manage to find a patch of sand, a smooth white patch of what appeared to be fine sand, and there we landed. It was not sand. What it was, I do not know, but the fungus wasn't growing on that. So what do you think that was? That wasn't very clear to me.
Yeah. It's not explained, is it? It's not explained at all. Because I was thinking this all the way through it. It was like, is there going to be an explanation for this patch? Maybe something in the sand that the fungus doesn't like? Or
I wondered at one point if this was a space that the fungus had made in order to allow them on shore.
It's kind of what, yeah, there is that implication as well, isn't there?
Yeah.
That it was kind of like a welcome mat.
Yeah. If that wasn't sand, I wonder if it was like bone or something like that, that had been digested or whatever.
Or it could be salt, because it's white. It could be sea salt, couldn't it? And maybe
salt and slugs.
Exactly.
Kind of thing,
yeah.
Perhaps.
Maybe the fungus doesn't like the very salty bits, because obviously it's a lagoon, so it's going to be brackish, isn't it?
Yeah, but definitely be salt water, wouldn't it? Yeah. I say definitely, like I'm an old seafarer.
Yeah. Salty sea dog pointing.
I've been on a Woolwich ferry, mate. I know all about that.
Nice.
Listen, there were some rough crossings on that, but that was mostly the other passengers. Anything that connects North and South London is not a good idea.
Mate, I've been on the ferry that goes across the Mersey, and especially if you've read any Ramsey Campbell, that takes on grim connotations.
I have to say, this couple, for the most part, seem very adept at survival. They've got some sails from the boat for tents. They've got all their provisions sorted out. I think the only one thing that happens is when the provisions start running low, he begins fishing. And I thought maybe you would have done that from the very start.
Yeah.
But apart from that, I mean, they're here for months, right?
Yeah.
This is not like, there's a ship's going to come by in 3 days' time. This now spreads over the coming weeks and months. And they seem to adapt very quickly and very well, except for, of course, the growth.
Yeah. Because they sort of pitch up in this bit that's not got any of the growth. And he says here that, indeed, I may say with much of happiness, for we were together. So you get the impression they're making the best of it, right? So there's probably a lot of shaking tents.
Panky.
A lot of flapping canvas, if you know what I
mean. Hey. Well, this is like Adam and Eve, right?
Yeah.
Kind of almost they're in their paradise, except, paradise lost.
Indeed, yeah.
Yes, and then as I said, we get the growth. It was on the thumb of her right hand that the growth first showed. It was only a small circular spot, much like a little grey mole. My God, how the fear leapt to my heart when she showed me the place. We cleaned it between us, washing it with carbolic and water. In the morning of the following day, she showed her hand to me again. The grey warty thing had returned. For a little while, we looked at one another in silence. Then, still wordless, We began to remove it. In the midst of the operation, she spoke suddenly. "What's that on the side of your face, dear?" Her voice was sharp with anxiety. So she's got one on her hand. He's got one on the side of his face.
He does a very gentlemanly thing, doesn't he? Because he's let us get your thumb done first. Because you get the impression that this chap's actually quite a decent fella, which makes it even more grim and sort of, the pathos, like you're saying.
Yeah. I liked this idea that they kind of talk about this, not talk about it, it seems. They're both struck by these sudden, very terrible thoughts. We were all at once afraid of something worse than death. We spoke of loading the boat with provisions and water and making our way out to the sea. Yet we were helpless for many causes, and the growth had attacked us already. We decided to stay. God would do with us what was his will. We would wait. I guess if the rafts brought them there on a current, how do they get out? They can't go against the current on a raft.
No, exactly.
And the big ship is obviously probably, is it grounded or beached or whatever it's called?
Yeah.
That's run aground, so that's not going anywhere. And you need a crew, right? So
yeah, it's that very much that Castaway, Robert Louis Stevenson kind of setup, isn't it?
Yes, he's leaving Friday.
Yes, indeed.
Sorry, the old Robinson Crusoe joke.
Oh, dear.
They pop back to the ship every now and again to get the rest of the stores. There we found that the fungus grew persistently. One of the nodules on the main deck became soon as high as my head. And it's like they've given up leaving the island now, partly because of the circumstances, but also we had realised that it would be unallowable to go among healthy humans with the thing from which we were suffering. So, yeah, if they get back to any kind of civilization or even other people, it's likely that this fungus is going to spread to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And he mentions that they knew that they had to be careful with food and all this kind of stuff, but supplies begin dwindling. So he starts trying to fish. And then you get this moment here. We were in this state of mind when the 4th month wore out. Then I made a very horrible discovery. One morning, a little before midday, I came off from the ship with a portion of the biscuits which were left. In the mouth of her tent, I saw my sweetheart sitting, eating something. Which takes on really horrible implications when you think about what this stuff was growing on.
Oh, yes, there's that as well. Yeah, what it's feeding on. And then that horror, again, is compounded because once she started eating it, she wants to continue. There's this compulsion. So then we get into that cordyceps idea, right, of this parasite starts controlling your actions. I think, didn't they say that the cordyceps takes over the nervous system? It doesn't affect the brain, it's the nervous system.
Yes, indeed.
So that horror, that's just tripled because your brain knows what's going on, but you're not in control of your own arms and legs.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because it's specifically the Ophiocordyceps unilateralis. I probably made a mess of that, but it's commonly known as the zombie ant fungus, which is an insect pathogenic fungus that grows in the humid environments in the tropics. And what it does, it alters the behavioral patterns of the infected ant. Hosts leave their canopy nests and foraging trails for the forest floor. Then they use their mandibles to attach themselves to the major vein on the underside of a leaf where the host remains until it dies and after its eventual death. The process leading to the mortality takes 4 to 10 days and includes a reproductive stage where fruiting bodies grow from the ant's head.
Oh, Brian Lumley.
Yeah, indeed. Fruiting bodies. Yeah. And obviously that became the inspiration for The Last of Us, which started off as video games and then became a TV series. Because the zombies in that are cordyceps zombies. It's basically the cordyceps fungus has evolved to now infect humans the same way it affects ants. So there you go. I do wonder if the creator of that has read this story or seen the movie adaptation, which I'm going to be talking about in a brief moment.
Yes, yes. And this is by no means WHH's only use of fungus, is it?
No.
He certainly had there's something going on which we can talk about at the end as well. Yeah, very definitely. And this is where we get probably the most horrific part, because the sort of penny finally drops, I think. So she's been eating the fungus. He tells her to stop, and he goes wandering off for a little walk. He's gone off fishing or something else. And we get this interesting parallel of what happened at the start, because the first we know of this person is a hoarse voice, his hoarse voice coming out across the waves. Now we get another hoarse voice. This is the voice that he hears on the island.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly I was called to myself by a queer hoarse sound on my left. Turning quickly, I saw that there was movement among an extraordinarily shaped mass of fungus close to my elbow. It was swaying uneasily as though it possessed life of its own. Abruptly, as I stared, the thought came to me that the thing had a grotesque resemblance to the figure of a distorted human creature. Even as the fancy flashed into my brain, there was a slight sickening noise of tearing, and I saw that one of the branch-like arms was detaching itself from the surrounding grey masses and coming towards me. The head of the thing, a shapeless grey ball, inclined in my direction. I stood stupidly, and the vile arm brushed across my face. I gave out a frightened cry and ran back a few paces. Now, again, this is beautiful because there's double horror here. Well, I suppose, let's say triple horror. There's some odd mass of fungus that calls to you. Not good.
No.
It's a person covered in fungus who is still alive. Even worse, it's just brushed your face. Yep. And now you've got fungus on your lips. And what do? You lick your lips. Yep. Hat trick.
Yeah. There was a sweetish taste upon my lips where the thing had touched me. I licked them and was immediately filled with an inhuman desire. I turned and seized a mass of the fungus. Then more and more. I was insatiable. In the midst of devouring, the remembrance of the morning's discovery swept into my mazed brain. It was sent by God. Oh, dear, 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 dear. I dashed the fragment I held to the ground, then utterly wretched and feeling a dreadful guiltiness, I made my way back to the little encampment.
This makes perfect sense on a biological level or evolutionary level.
Yeah.
That if this thing wants you to ingest it, it's going to taste good, right?
Oh, yeah.
In the same way, like a hedgehog doesn't want to be cuddled or picked up, so it's got spikes, right? Or certain flowers will, give off certain scents. If they want to attract the bee, then it gives off a sweet scent.
Yeah, like carnivorous plants. Like the pitchers and the Venus flytrap, they've got that sticky, sugary, nice tasting stuff in them because they want to attract creatures in and then kill them. So same kind of thing. Yeah.
He returns to his fiancée and she understands what's happened on some level. Marvellous intuition, he calls it. Her quiet sympathy made it easier for me, and I told her of my sudden weakness, yet omitted to mention the extraordinary thing which had gone before. I desired to spare her all unnecessary terror. But, of course, for himself, I had added an intolerable knowledge to breed an incessant terror in my brain, for I doubted not but that I had seen the end of one of those men who had come to the island in the ship in the lagoon, and in that monstrous ending I had seen our own. So it's confirmation, just in case he needed it, that this is their eventual fate. And that's pretty much it, really.
Yep.
The fungus takes over more and more of their bodies. The food supplies dwindle. They manage to resist the lure of eating the fungus again, but it's way too late now anyway. A week ago, we ate the last of the biscuit, and since that time I have caught 3 fish. I was out here fishing tonight when your schooner drifted upon me out of the mist. I hailed you. You know the rest, and may God out of his great heart bless you for your goodness to a couple of poor outcast souls. God bless you. Goodbye. And then he's off. Wow.
And we get the final revelation. I like this here. The sun flung up a stray beam across the hidden sea, pierced the mist dully, and lit up the receding boat with a gloomy fire. Indistinctly, I saw something nodding between the oars. I thought of a sponge, a great grey nodding sponge. The oars continued to ply. They were grey, as was the boat, and my eyes searched the moment vainly for the conjunction of hand and oar. My gaze flashed back to the head. It nodded forward as the oars went backward for the stroke. Then the oars were dipped. The boat shot out of the patch of light, and the thing went nodding into the mist.
Oh, grim. Eh? It's just, yeah. And I say it's even grimmer because it's tinged with that empathy.
Oh, yeah.
And again, this is a person whose circumstances, through no fault of his own or their own, the same as our Deathline guy.
Mm.
I mean, all right, to be fair, he was killing people and eating them, but because that's all he knew.
Yeah.
You know, this is just one of those wrong place, wrong time kind of situations.
What a very effective little story, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And I think, again, the other thing, as with all weird stories, so many things left unanswered. Like we mentioned, the sand that wasn't sand, because some of the trails on the island are made of this stuff as well, that cut through the fungus.
Yeah.
So we're not sure what that is. And as always with these things, I want to know what happened next.
Yes.
Like, did the men on the schooner think, right, okay, 180, let's hope that wind starts blowing. If you can imagine them blowing at the sails.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Because imagine if that current picked you up and started taking you towards the lagoon. What do you do?
Ooh. Oh, that'd be grim. Well, that'd be really tense, wouldn't it? That'd be a good sequel. Yeah.
I mean, it's almost thing-like, isn't it, in that sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
At the end of that, well, we can't go back, right? You know, we don't know which of us is infected. In fact, you know, there's a lot of parallels there.
Oh, there is, yeah.
Again, was this an influence on that story or similar stories?
Yeah, because I mean, even a story that was influenced, well, a Doctor Who episode that was influenced by the Thing, the Seeds of Doom, that there's a lot of parallels to this as well.
Right.
You know,
right.
That's obviously a plant, but it's the same kind of thing, the same kind of taking over of the body and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And even in a John Pertwee Dalek story, Jo gets infected by a fungus in Planet of the Daleks. It's growing up her arm.
Ooh.
And things like that. So, yeah.
I mean, fungus is a very old life form, right, that we shared the planet with.
Oh, yeah.
Am I right in thinking that the largest living thing is a fungus?
I think so, yes. I think I've read that somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. It's in your back garden.
yeah.
It will be next week.
But it's like the recent Resident Evil games, Resident Evil 7 and Village, the central biological threat to that is a parasitic fungus that is then used by these pharmaceutical companies, yada, 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 and things like that. So, I mean, this kind of concept, it's everywhere, isn't it? Because when you think about it, when you look at like, you know, zombie ant fungus, that's real. That's not something conjured up by a writer.
I think, did they once support alien sex fiends?
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. They're probably at the Bat Cave. Yeah, with specimen as support.
And we mentioned that WHH had, well, fungus and pigs seem to be two of the things, aren't they?
Fungus and pigmen, yeah.
And there is speculation that this came about because of his fear of infection. And there's some speculation around that as well. Was that why he went on such a fitness and physical hygiene drive? I think it's very easy to look back and say that person did this, so obviously, or perhaps this happened to them, so they came out like that. Without really knowing much more about it, it's just idle speculation, really.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, but I suppose we could say a parallel with that is Bram Stoker and Dracula, right? And syphilis, you know, let's put it that way.
Indeed, yeah.
That fear of the civilized world being infected by something.
Yeah.
And this isn't a tangible threat in a sense, right? It's not like you're invaded by, well, they could be from another country, they could be from Mars, but you can shoot those things, right? You can drop bombs on them and fight back against them. You can't fight fungus. It's fighting nature, isn't it, in effect?
Yeah.
That's assuming, of course, that this is a natural fungus. So there's another prequel. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? Because, I mean, you can think of parallels to the colour out of space.
Oh, yeah.
And fungi from Yugoth, you know. Maybe this is Yugothian fungi, you know. We never know.
One of their ships crash landed in the Pacific.
Exactly.
They went a bit further north. So they were hoping to hit. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
That was Amigo saying, I told you took the wrong turning at Jupiter. Pre-GPS, he had his map folded up over the windscreen and it all went wrong.
And the brain in the brass cylinder was going, not that left, my left.
Oh, there's a philosophical conundrum. If you're a brain in a cylinder, what's left and right?
Ooh.
Oh, do you have any spatial awareness?
There you go.
If there are any brains in cylinders out there listening, which is entirely feasible,
yeah,
do let us know.
Yeah, send us a wax cylinder and we'll figure it out.
So you mentioned adaptations, and there's been a couple of this, I believe.
Well, specifically, there's a film that was released in 1963 called Matango, which is a great little bit of work. It was released in the UK as Fungus of Terror.
Oh, nice.
And in the US as Attack of the Mushroom People.
Even better.
Yeah, but it's a Japanese movie directed by Ishiro Honda, who many people will recognize the name. He's the guy from the Godzilla movies, which is why, obviously, the listeners can't see this, but it's why I'm wearing my Godzilla t-shirt.
There we go.
So there you go. Yeah. He lived from 1911 to 1993, did 46 feature films, including he was basically the creator of the kaiju phenomena.
Wow.
Yeah. He did a couple of other horror movies, but he directed and co-wrote Godzilla, and he directed 8 of the Godzilla movies. In fact, the 8th and final Godzilla film he directed in 1975 was the last film he did. He retired after that moment. But yeah, Matango was seen as something of a departure. It was different from Honda's other films of the period because of it exploring darker themes and featuring a very sort of grim, desolate kind of palette to it and all this. Now, he actually got in trouble for it. It was nearly banned due to scenes that depicted characters resembling victims of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Wow. Yeah, there's another layer of grimness, isn't it? And you can see how those two ideas would cross over very easily, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Now, I watched it again today. I've seen it before, but it's a really, really good movie. I think anyway, it's a very good little film. It sticks to the plot pretty much, although it's basically just done. The ship is becalmed, it's demasted, but instead of all the crew buggering off, they stay around. And then they find the ship, basically. So there's other characters. So then you get that sort of tension of people going cabin fever and stir crazy, and you get that. You kind of get groups, and the captain's a douchebag, and there's a couple of women, and all that kind of thing, right? So you get that human tension going on. But eventually, they go ashore, and there's the mushrooms, and one of the guys eats the mushrooms and starts going loopy. There's the really nice scene, sort of halfway through the film, where they're all asleep and they're woken up by movement on the deck of the ship. And yeah, and they sort of go and investigate, but then they're back in a room, and in the doorway, this man with mushrooms sprouted out of his head sort of appears. And they think they were all having a dream or seeing ghosts and all this kind of stuff, right? So you're getting a lot of that sort of unreliable narrator stuff going on with it.
Yeah.
But it basically follows the plot of the story. Another person, and one of the women starts eating the mushrooms now, and it all goes horrendously wrong, leading up to the final scene, which is a sight to behold, where the sort of main character is gone looking for the other woman who's his sort of betrothed, and finds her and the others in a cave, and they've been taken over by these mushrooms. And oh man, the design, these mushroom people. It's absolutely brilliant. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's great.
I've never seen it. I watched a very little bit of it earlier. And I have to say that the colour palette looked really great. The sets look really good.
Mm.
And the bit I watched, the sound effects were very striking as well.
Oh, it's quite psychedelic as well. Toward it gets like a lot of like piling sounds upon each other into this big cacophony, and it's very sort of hallucinatory and very, very effective.
I say it looks a little bit Cormanesque in a way. I was put in mind of that kind of feel.
Very much so. Very much so, yeah. Very much, I would agree with you there. Now, see, yeah, it has also had a TV adaptation. It was adapted for Suspicion in 1958 and was one of the 10 episodes of Suspicion made by Shamley Productions, the company established by Alfred Hitchcock to produce Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Yeah, that's really quite good as well. That's a very faithful adaptation. In fact, that's a more faithful adaptation than Matango. Yeah, it's called Voice in the Night, the episode. So
I think that's up on YouTube as well, that whole series. Yeah, so I'll get some links up to those. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, and there's also an anime adaptation, episode 229 of Naruto Shippuden, titled "Eat or Die: Mushrooms from Hell."
That's a great title.
I know. It's an adaptation. Apparently, mushrooms overtake the ship on which the team is sailing. Upon being eaten, the mushrooms sprout from the eater's skin and influence their actions. So, yeah, there you go. There's a couple of comics as well, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Swamp Thing was inspired by it, wasn't it? The main villain was called Matango, wasn't he?
Matango, that's right. So, yeah, well, this is the interesting thing, again, with someone like Hodgson. If you ask the average person, William Hope Hodgson, no one would have heard of him. Amongst Lovecraftian circles, probably most people will have heard of him due to House on the Borderland.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a little bit like Clark Ashton Smith. They crop up again and again in these film adaptations, stories, TV shows.
Mm.
So their influence is there, but it's not always obvious, perhaps.
Yeah, because I mean, you mentioned earlier Brian Lumley, because Fruiting Bodies was, it was inspired by this story.
Yeah.
Because, Lumley has mentioned The Voice in the Night as being one of his favourite stories of all time.
Yeah, yeah. Stephen
King, Grey Matter, about a guy who was overtaken by fungus after drinking an infected can of beer.
Yeah.
That was inspired by it as well.
Was that the one on one of those films, one of those portmanteau films?
Yes, it was. Yeah. Yeah, it was also in his Night Shift collection.
Right. Yeah.
So also as well, Vandermeer did a lot of stuff with fungus, didn't he? And I've already mentioned Last of Us and stuff like that.
Yeah. So it has become quite a trope.
Mm.
And again, I don't know, without delving back before Hodgson, how common that sort of trope was, people being overtaken by something in that way. Nothing much really springs to mind. It sounds quite sort of H.G. Wells, Jules Verne.
Yes.
But I can't think of Poe, for example. Nothing springs to mind in Poe along these lines.
No. I think there is a British Library Tales of the Weird collection about fungal horrors that I haven't actually got yet. Because I've got the plants one, but I haven't got the fungal horrors one yet.
That's just a picture of my training shoes.
Oh, grim. Nice.
I did have that. I clicked on the TV the other day, smack bang into an advert about, do your toenails look like this? Oh, really? Please, do you have to do that?
At least it wasn't for hemorrhoid cream.
Yes, how to make piles of money, or money off piles.
Money of piles. Yeah. Nail and paste, wasn't it? The evangelists with the religious pile cream. Yeah. Bumberries of Beelzebub. That's always stuck with me. I was just,
nice. Another great band name.
Mm.
So there we are. One of Hodgson's finest stories. I think there's two links there to our last episode. We mentioned the empathetic central, again, inverted commas, monster, and Donald Pleasance. who, of course, was in Deathline and also played Carnacki in The Horse of the Invisible. Was it the Rivals of Sherlock Holmes TV series?
It was the Rivals of Sherlock Holmes, yes.
Which is sort of sometimes available on YouTube and sometimes isn't. You have to search around a bit. I think sometimes it gets taken down for whatever reason.
Well, when they were up, I ripped them all. I sailed the seven seas. Well, I use the YouTube downloader, right?
Avast ye.
Exactly. I've done that with a lot of stuff. That's why I've got like the suspicion and all these kind of stuff on a hard drive, because if I see something I want to see, but I haven't got time to watch it, and I'm like, oh, the BBC is going to come and take this down. I'm going to rip it quick.
Absolutely, absolutely. Did you ever see a film called Amazon Women on the Moon?
I don't know if I've seen it, but I know of it.
You need to. You need to. I'm pretty sure it was the start of that. They had one of those early adverts for video piracy is destroying the industry. And then it cut to a group of pirates going, oh no, they're going to come and arrest us. Great film. Amazon Women on the Moon.
Nice.
So, yeah, an excellent story. Do let us know what you think, dear listener. Is there anything you can add to that? I think we've got a couple of unresolved questions there, perhaps. Always interested to hear your thoughts and speculations. And have you got any good fungus or mushroom stories as well? At least ones that we can read out over the air.
Yeah, careful. Right, so it's that time of day again. Should we delve into the mailbag, sir?
Let's have a delve. Just wipe that fungus off there. Be careful of that.
Yeah, careful. And, it's rather sweet. Yeah.
He's doomed. He's doomed, folks.
Doomed.
We start with an email from our friend Niels Hedgelin, who is, of course, the Auburn correspondent for Strange Shadows. Niels writes, I've been going through your older IBC episodes, and you mentioned some terms I'm not familiar with. We probably mentioned lots of terms. I think it's fair to say we're well steeped in UK vernacular. Shall we put it that way?
Indeed, yeah.
So Niels continues, Royston babies, maybes, rabies. Sounds like it's some sort of location with sordid history. Well, it certainly is. More on that in a moment. Niels also asks, and Dogger Man. I think you've used it in a way similar to a shaman, but I couldn't find any reference to that term. It may have been in episode 36 about W.H. Pugmire, and in particular, how he showed up earlier in the story, but then wasn't mentioned later on. So, Royston babies. Well, Royston Vasey is the name of a place. Well, it is a location with a sordid history. It's a fictional location created by the team at the League of Gentlemen, and was a long-running TV series on British television. I guess it's 15, 20 years ago now.
It's got to be, yeah. So late 90s, something like that. Late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah.
So imagine a kind of inland Innsmouth populated by a very strange bunch of characters. And I think as it went on, as each series developed, it got sort of darker and darker, didn't it? And the League of Gentlemen guys who went on to do Number 9 and all sorts of other things, they're very rooted in British horror and British comedy, and it's a masterful combination of the two. So I can't really describe it beyond that. I think you just have to go and watch it, basically. And if I can find some links to YouTube clips, which I'm sure I can, I'll add those in the show notes below. All I will say is if anyone knows, if you're a local person, it's then yeah, you'll know.
A local shop for local people.
Yes.
Now, I think Doggerman, I think it means Doggerland, which was specifically a anthology of Cthulhu mythos stories that I put together that we were both in. And in that, there was these antler-headed shaman kind of characters. So we mentioned Doggerland. Doggerland is actually a submerged bit of land that once connected the UK with the mainland Europe, and it's kind of our Atlantis, right? Yeah. And so that's what the whole concept of that come from. Now, a dogger man sounds like somebody who goes out to car parks late nights looking for the rumpy pumpy.
I was going to say Dogging Land is Bedford Morrison's car park on a Thursday night, apparently. So I've heard.
Allegedly.
Yeah, Shadows over Doggerland, wasn't it? Was the collection.
Yes, indeed it was. Yeah.
While we're talking about Niels, or talking to Niels, we'd just like to mention that Niels is organising a Clark Ashton Smith conference in Auburn, Smith's hometown, in January 2026. And sounds like it's shaping up to be a great event. As soon as we get all the details for that, of course, we'll be posting them out here and on Strange Shadows and in Innsmouth News as well.
Next up, we're going over to Patreon here to Alan Brignall, who writes, I've just listened to Fungi from Yuggoth Part 6. Is it possible that the publication Interesting Times, which you could not trace, was actually Arthur Harris's Interesting Items? I can't now find the point where you mentioned it, but he published some of Lovecraft's poetry. That's very possible. In which case, there's a typo. If it is, there's a typo in the annotated fungi that we're going off. The walled garden story, which has a particular psychological effect on me, is H.G. Wells's The Door in the Wall. It ties in with your discussion of vivid childhood memories and suggests how they could lead one astray in later life.
Interesting. I don't think I've read that. The name kind of rings a bell.
I think I have, but it was a long, long time ago. I'll have to dig it out and have a read. Yeah.
Yeah. There was also an M.R. James story, a similar thing about a door in a wall in the garden that related back to a childhood weird experience that he had.
Yes, which is the one that I went out to where he grew up by the rectory. I did that whole video on it.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, it's called A Vignette.
Yeah,
it was about there was a coppice nearby and he saw a figure going through the door in the wall and all that.
Yeah, so we'll be digging that out and having a look at it. Thanks for that, Alan. Now, last episode, of course, we were talking about that great British horror film Deathline, and we got a lot of correspondence in about that. First off, I'd like to thank Eamon because I was talking about the posters I used to have as a kid from the horror films. I couldn't remember what they were called. Eamon kindly emailed in to remind me that they were called Monster Mag. Yes, of course. Not only that, but he also sent in some pictures of his collection of both Monster Mag, open it out if you dare. I think he said he's got all the issues of that. Also, the excellent House of Hammer magazine that was around the same time. That was a really great magazine put out by Hammer. It had articles and also graphic or comic adaptations of a lot of the films as well. And yeah, I remember having copies of those at one time as well. So yeah, that's great. Thanks for that, Eamon. And I'll put the pictures up on the Facebook group. Rambam 3000 on YouTube writes, being a somewhat regular rider of the Underground, I totally share your attitude that it would be the perfect setting for a horror movie. Here's the thing. All through this episode, I wondered, have I heard of this movie before? And when you said the line, "Why the doors?" it clicked. It's referenced in, at first just ghostly, by Karl Edward Wagner, one of his Kane stories set in the modern day. In this case, London of 1987. It's an homage to the Avengers, with Kane taking the John Steed role. The relevant passage comes when the protagonist, Cody Lennox, is talking with a succubus who has taken the form of his dead wife and is leading him to the underground. Cody references the movie saying parts of it were shot down here and the print we saw was retitled Raw Meat. Succubus Kathy says, "You pulled one of my stockings over your head and chased me around the apartment with a rubber chicken and yelling, 'Mind the doors.'" It's a great story, and I think Rob would like it if he wants to wax nostalgic about pre-gentrification London again. Wagner was also a huge Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard fan, so it ties in. Absolutely. I'm pretty sure I've read that.
Yeah, I have. I know I have, yeah.
Yeah, I'm very sure I've read that. And I know that Wagner spent time in London. He was definitely in London at one point. So he was interviewed by Carl Ford of the Dagon fanzine. I can't remember which issue of Dagon that was published in. Yeah, Carl Edward Wagner. I think we covered episode 46, Reflections of the Winter of My Soul.
That's the one.
Yeah. And, well, we're going to be getting back to him at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, because I thought we'd done Styx, but we obviously haven't. But I know we have talked about it when we talked about True Detective.
Yes.
Because there's a similar thing in that with the lattice work and all that kind of stuff. And I also want to cover on River of Nights Dreaming, which, because it's one of my favourite King in Yellow stories that wasn't written by Robert Chambers. So, yeah, if you've not read any Wagner, pick up In a Lonely Place. It's been reprinted with an introduction by Ramsey Campbell, and it's a tremendous short story collection.
He also wrote one of the better Conan pastiches, Road of Kings, as well, which is well worth a read.
Right, moving on. Black Cavalier 9506 writes, interesting episode. I never heard of this movie being in the US. Rob's funeral request put me in mind of Terry Jones's Naked Organist from Python. Nice. My city originally had a lot of flooding, so the oldest part of the city was raised about a story, and the original streets and storefronts are still under the current streets in some areas. I've taken tours of the sanitized parts, but would definitely balk at going off the path down there. Oh, that's the great setup for a short story or something, isn't it?
Yeah, it seems you get this in a lot of cities, don't you? It's almost the literal underworld, you know.
Oh yeah, but like sunken things and places that were burnt down and they just built on top of it.
The London sewers, Mr. Bazalgette, and all that stuff.
Indeed. Yeah.
The Naked Organist from Python. Well, I was going more for Dr. Phibes, but I'll take that. Continuing on YouTube, about our Deathline episode, we have this from Mournful Sigh. Evening from sunny Southend, gents. I know Southend very well. I remember watching this many years ago on TV, so thanks for reminding me to give it another watch. During the mid-2000s, I worked mainly the late shift at South Kensington and used to wave the lantern to the last train leaving the platforms after midnight. Having watched this, and of course American Werewolf in London, I can confirm that walking around a mostly empty station at 1 a.m. definitely gave me very eerie feelings. What a job, eh? Waving the lantern. That's fantastic.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, there is something about wandering around a almost completely deserted London Underground. As I mentioned, I'm drunkenly got lost. Yeah, it's very unsettling. Sobers you up pretty damn quick, Right, also on YouTube from a regular contributor, Heather Poirier. Another great episode. I've heard my share of late night weird noises rolling out of tube tunnels. Euston is particularly bad. Time to eyeball each opening and align oneself with the nearest exit passage. Yeah, it may have been Euston that we got lost in.
You can tell Heather plays Call of Cthulhu, right?
Oh, yeah.
Good survival skills there.
Indeed. And she also comments about episode 104, where we talked to Alia Synesthesia. What a terrific episode. Alia is one of the most interesting guests the IBC has had. Multi-talented and creative. I can't imagine what it was like to grow up in northern Siberia. Well done. Yeah, it certainly is a very interesting person to talk to. He's one of those that we could have gone on for another few hours about various bits and pieces.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I'm sure hopefully she'll visit again in the future. One of the things that really impressed me was that old school approach to put in her own,
The tapes. Yeah, they bought one of them machines. And
Yeah. Very interesting. And to conclude today's mailbag, we have Andrew Lane 4766, who merely posted on YouTube, "Mind the gap."
Is that Mandela effect again?
Yeah.
Because I thought it was Mind the Gap. You thought it was Mind the Gap, but it's not. It's Mind the Doors.
Yeah, Lara thought it was Mind the Gap. It's Mind the Doors, yeah. And I think, as we said at the time, it's because of Bank Station, which was Mind the Gap.
Yes, indeed.
The recording.
Yeah, the recording. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you something else that struck me about that Mind the Doors. Listening back, because I was trying to get a recording of it for the show and ended up doing it myself. He does it in quite a sort of posh voice, like he's trying to speak, "Mind the door." It's trying to speak properly, It just makes it even sadder. It's horrible.
It does. Yeah, because he's obviously imitating the chap who's been doing it, who obviously works for the BBC or something and speaks with RP,
Excellent. Okay, that's it for today's visit to Innsmouth, folks. I hear Mr. Sargent is pulling up in the bus outside. It remains only to thank you for visiting us today, and I hope you all get safely back on the bus. If you hear any hoarse voices calling from across the waves, pay no heed is my advice, and check your thumbs on the way out.
Yeah, don't suck them.
So just time for us to thank all our listeners and viewers and supporters. Big thanks to everyone I was chatting to at Chaosium Con. And you can see some of those people at the Innsmouth Literary Festival: Mike Mason, Paul Fricker, Matt Sanderson, and so on. And Ali Wilkes, who we mentioned, who we'll be chatting to next episode. Thanks also to our marvellous patrons for supporting the show. If you'd like to join them and help us spread our tentacles further, just check out our Patreon site for all the benefits that accrue on joining the Innsmouth team. And with that, as the foghorn sounds over Innsmouth Bay, it's a goodbye from me, Rob Whiten.
And it's goodbye from me, Tim Mendes.